Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Yes, we are joined by Ranty and Anthony. How are you both doing?
Good.
Doing good.
You're not sounding too swell today.
Yeah, I'm pretty rough, but I'm all right. I'll survive at least one show.
No, not you, Ranty. You sound like normal.
No, thanks.
Ranty's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'll survive.
So we've got Alan B in chat. He's hijacked the word coward because he's actually trying to call Mr. Michael MW out, calling him a coward for not joining the panel. But essentially, I think that was the word that was bandied around for Mick West when we were trying to get him to come on the show.
No, I wouldn't let that slide. Mick West's not a coward. He came in. He faced his licks. You know, he took his beating, and beat him we did.
To be honest, he is quite interactive, Mick West, for which he should be given credit.
I doubt very much he'll be back on this show.
Well, I said yesterday, he set the standard. So for the people like Gem Panda, you know, he immediately turned it around as like, you can come in my chat. It's like, you've got nothing to hold me to account for. There's nothing that, you know, you're going to hold over my head and demand I come on your show with, Gem. However, you guys have made assertions that need corrections, i.e. angular size at distance, adding to the original assertions. Or to put it another way, you've made gross errors. So I can hold that over your head and demand that you come in or be called a coward. What are you going to hold over my head?
Science flat Earth, right?
That you broke up.
Oh, by the way, speaking of no science on a flat Earth, last night I got a phone. I got woke up by somebody who said, "You need to go on Red's Rhetoric's channel. He's live now, and Antonio is due to go on." And I was like, I can't be arsed getting out of bed to go and listen to it. Anyway, I flicked it on my phone, and I'm laying in bed. And sure enough, Antonio was due to go on. And when I turned it on, the first thing I heard was Sean saying, "All right, he's had his 5 minutes. He's not here. Is he going to show?" A minute or two later, he turns up and in he goes. And first things first, I'll give the guys credit, because on Red's show, normally you can expect a nonsense gish gallop nonsense fight of ad hom personal attacks on incredulity. But to be honest, they were nice with him. They were polite. They were professional-ish. And they had a cordial conversation, and I was gobsmacked at how cordial it was. And to be honest, you know, it was good. It was the bar was raised considerably. But I've got to say, it's a little bit hypocritical when the challenge was the challenge that they were putting out was that they wanted any flat earther to go in there with, and this is quoting what they said, with evidence to support their model, and then they would counter with similar evidence based on theirs, and they'll see which one best matches reality. Now, they wanted the model of the flat Earth person to be declared. They wanted an allegiance with presumably the flat Earth map or whichever model or map that they buy into, rectangular looping model or whatever. And basically, Antonio went on, and they never asked him for it, but they were quite clear that they wanted the flat Earth model that the flat Earther buys into, which begs the question then. Well, what's the ball Earth model that can be shown for us to consider? Because if they're going to demand a flat Earth model from the other person, well, can we see the model for the ball Earth, please? Because as far as I can work out, Google Earth is not it, and I don't know of any other model. So let's see the model for the ball Earth model, please. Can we see this working model that we can like test? Because when we test it on Google Earth, it doesn't seem to comport with reality. When we test the Metabunk curve calculator that shows horizons at like a mile away, and they're clearly like 10 miles away, that ain't matching either. So what's the ball Earth model, please? Can we see some working model for the ball Earth so that we can test it, please?
Well, here's the thing. They can apparently measure the size of the sun and the distance to the sun.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Ranty, just one sec. Sean says, misrepresenting Liley. For the moderated formal debate, there is a requirement to put forth evidence to support your model. The hangout was a free-for-all. Yeah, that's the point, Sean. You're asking for the evidence to support our model, right? Most people don't really have a model. Most people, there is no science for a flat Earth. You guys were asking us to present evidence for our model. Most people don't even accept that there is a model because there are no scientists on flat Earth. There is no budget for a flat Earth. There are no scientific instruments for a flat Earth. Most we've got a P900 and maybe a compass. So what's your model that we can see your working model, please? Google Earth doesn't appear to be it. Metabunk curve calculator doesn't appear to be it. Come on, Sean. What is your working model for us to test, please? Sorry, Ranty, as you were.
They can measure the distance to the sun and they can predict how wide the sun is, apparently by using angular size and all this kind of stuff. But how does angular size work on their ball if you're looking around a curve too? Because, like you say, they don't incorporate that into the curvature calcs.
Yeah, they don't seem to want to answer that question. Mick couldn't even answer it himself. The conclusion of the interview with Mick, or the hangout with Mick, was that one, he refuses to acknowledge or correct the fallacious citation of where he gets 76R from. Secondly, he what was the second one?
He has no proof of the R value used in his broken perspective denying proof of nothing begging the question calculator.
Yeah, he accepted that the R was a presupposition. And the third one was that he had nothing to explain why the perspective maths weren't calculated for in his calculator. There was no explanation for why that missing piece of chunk of maths was missing. So it seems that the Metabunk curve calculator is totally useless for doing the thing. It appears that they're telling us that we live on a ball, but when you test it, it clearly turns out that we're not.
Do you have something you wanted to add to that, Ranty?
No, seems all good to me.
Yeah, so that's it. So you guys, it seems, don't actually have a model. Now, models are pseudoscience, so I couldn't really give a crap about models if I'm ruthlessly honest. However, you idiots have often asserted to me that no model, no flat Earth, which I dismiss out of hand because models are pseudoscience. However, the people who have asserted no model, no flat Earth must now die by that sword because there's no globe model. There isn't one. We've smashed the last one. It doesn't include perspective. That was the last model we had put in front of us. Before that, it was Google Earth, and we smashed that too. So we've smashed the last two incarnations of what you call a model. So you don't have one. Yeah, that's the bottom line here. Religious believers.
So perhaps, Sean, if you're in there, you could come on and maybe show us, or at least put us a link, or maybe tell us where to find this said model for the ball, orbiting, spinning, gravity, you know. Doesn't have to be all-encompassing. You don't have to explain thunderstorms or cyclones or whirlpools. Just show us how it works. Show us where we can measure the curve. Show us how we can measure the gravity.
Oh, talking of curvature. So Ranty showed me some pictures earlier this morning, and the conversation we had, I'm hoping I'm not going to steal any thunder from you here, Ranty, talking of thunder, but you showed me some exquisite flat Earth slam dunk proof. So do you want to, any chance you can share it with us?
Well, there's I can certainly do that. There's two ways you can view, you know, there'll be two ways to view these. Let me get the images up, not them ones, because you don't want them, do you? Right. Get the correct one up. Floaty land, how's that? How's that for a start?
What is that?
That's floaty land, mate. But is it looming or is it not looming? What do you think's happening there?
That looks like the sky is being reflected underneath as an inferior mirage.
Indeed, it does, and indeed, that is exactly what's happening. Because from this location, I should always be able to look down upon this, and I've filmed it before, and it's the sand dunes at Barrow. On this day, when I went today, what had happened is the lower parts were cut off. They had the sky reflecting over this area here, making it appear that it's being loomed. Exactly what happened with your Isle of Man stuff.
Well,
the
thing is, right, without that floaty land there, the rumpus would claim that with a theodolite and £25, you can calculate with one simple sum the radius of the Earth. Yeah, where would you point the horizon? Where would you point the theodolite crosshairs? Would you point it at the horizon that you see, the hard horizon, even though with the lander you know that that's a mirage? Or would you try and guess for where you think it might be an apparent horizon? What is the position? How could you ever deduce the actual horizon when sometimes you can't even tell that there's a horizon there? Where the land is not, there is still an inferior mirage of the sky, making the hard horizon look lower. But you can also have the opposite, where the sea gets miraged on top of itself, and that's called a fata brumosa. So how would you ever know? And if you're looking out to the horizon at the sea and there's nothing there to tell you that there's a mirage, because if it's a fata brumosa, if there's a ship there, it'll cover it. You guys will think that it's curved, but it's actually a mirage. It's called fata brumosa. So how would you be able to contrast the two? Curvature of the Earth over fata brumosa. Fata brumosas are a thing. It appears to be obscuring the bottom of boats at times. But you guys call it curve. Well,
check out this image. This is absolutely beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is absolutely sensational. This, because we know that we can never, ever, ever see beneath this position here, where the reflection is the center of. We never, no matter how high I go, I can never see below this. No matter how low I go, I always see to this point here. So that is where the land is. That's where the ocean meets the ocean meets the land. So all this reflection is taking place over the water. All this reflection of this is clearly that. It's just a reflection on the water. But they would say that this down here is the hard horizon, which it isn't. The hard horizon is in the center here, right in the middle there, right where that reflection band splits and goes up and down.
Somebody in chat there says that's a Fata Morgana. Right. Do you want to come on and explain? We can explain to you why it's not a Fata Morgana.
Here we have the sand dune and the lighthouse. So there we have the lighthouse. There we have the three chimneys of the building that are behind the sand dune. Then we have the sand dune reflected back down on itself, and the top of the lighthouse reflected back down itself into the water. All this from here is water. So all this is being miraged and reflected down into the water. That's just what's happening here. I mean, we were able to get under it before, if you remember, on the other images that I have, when we got under the refraction zone, looking at this building here, and we saw it splitting there. Remember? When we got under the refraction zone, but this time we're above it. So we're above it and we're looking down on it. But you ballers are going to love this, though. This is what I caught from next to the water, because you're going to say that this is the curvature of the Earth. This is a soundly proof, this.
Wait, Ranty, don't release it. Hide it.
Yeah, this is what Soundly would never show. He would never show what they would say is the curvature of the Earth. Now, we know that these buildings don't float. We know that. We know that this is a reflection of the sky. And also, we got this curve going on, this backward curve, just like Soundly shows on his Lake Pontchartrain stuff. Now, this is the first day that I've gone there, and I've been every day now for the last 6 weeks. And it's the first day that I've gone by the waterside and seen this in this state where it's reflecting down and the bottom of the buildings are cut off. This is the first time. Now, bear in mind that the top of these buildings you should never see anyway. But all it is it's just a reflection. That's all it is. In this particular case, it looks like it's the air that's reflecting it. because every time I've been down to this position at this exact spot, we've seen the buildings down to the base, sometimes down to the sand dunes. So this is clearly the air that's mimicking the air above it and causing this reflection. But the ballers would say this is curvature, which we know it's not the case. And Soundly would release this saying this is curvature. If you look at Soundly's videos, they all look, this mirroring effect goes on, this curvature going back on itself here. It's exactly the same. So, yeah, but this is the first time I've done it out of, what, 35 days or so, 40 days?
I made it.
What else do we have?
Good morning, Plain Truth, inside your machine.
Uh-huh.
The Plain Truth, what do you think? Do you think the ballers would say that this was curve of the earth?
Well, I'm gonna have to take your word for it because I'm driving right now, so I'm not really watching what you're doing. But
right,
yeah,
okay.
I mean that's just the way it goes. It's always that.
Hey, Jazz.
Here's another one. This is a very interesting one. I lowered my position even more, but you can clearly see that the building itself never gets the chance to touch this watery area underneath because it gets blocked out by the miraging effect of the sky above it.
Nathan, are we keeping Jazz in or what? Is he?
Of course,
That might not be
Jazz is a good guy. Baller,
Yeah, but
a good guy.
he's not spoke.
Say hello, Jazz.
There we go. What do you think of this, Anthony?
Right the second, I'm thinking Jazz needs to speak.
Hey mate, I'm just trying to sort out my microphone. Stand by one.
No worries, that's fine, mate. What do I think of this? Let's have a look. Runty, where are you?
So yeah, this is the first time in what, like I say, about a month and a half, 6 weeks that I've been going, and I've actually caught this effect. What I did find weird was that the wind seemed to be coming and blowing into my face from this direction in what appeared to be a south, I would say southeasterly, but the map, sorry, not the maps, the weather forecast was for a northeasterly, which was really strange because it seemed to be coming and hitting me in the face from this direction. So maybe that had something to do with it. And the conditions are very volatile today. The weather, the wind is going to change quite a lot. So maybe it's something to do with the atmospherics. Might have them up actually. See if I can get Google.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Ranty. Is that the last of it?
I just want to show you this this forecast, weather forecast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Today, because it might be interesting that this is something that's going on. I'm going to try and work out why we got this kind of phenomena today. But we've got a northwesterly, and it goes to northwest, then north, then northeast, then east. So it does a full change from 2 p.m. till 9 p.m. over 7 hours. It goes from a northwesterly to an easterly. Right. So I'm presuming that it might be something to do with the atmospherics that's causing that today. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I saw today.
Awesome. I thought the images with the, I'm going to call it reflection. In other words, you've got the same fold line that you get with every other mirage, but it's so perfect with the point of convergence that it looks like a reflection on the water. Just beautiful, really beautiful image. Yeah, I'll just put that back up just so the audience has a sort of follow on, and I'll make it nice and big. It isn't that glorious.
And yeah, like I say, this is water that it or it's the air blocking the water, whichever. It's not the actual. This isn't the land here because there's no land there. It's just doesn't exist. So it's either a reflection of the air or it's a reflection of the water. Either way, that's what was causing it today.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Friendly in chat.
Love it.
Yeah, what I noticed about the hangout with the Reds. By the way, are you finished, Ranty?
Yeah, I'm finished. Yeah.
What I noticed about the hangout with Reds, or the bit that I saw of it, was that the part that Antonio went in, and he was talking about lasers and sugar syrup and how it makes the light behave in a different way. And rather, I'm not too bothered about what his content was. The point I was making was that they were talking about a very narrow, like they've gone down a particular route and they've got down to a very narrow part of that particular hole, that rabbit hole. And they were discussing the ins and outs of it. But for me, it kind of stops with the curvature, axial rotation, and gravity point. And we kind of need to prove that them 3 points first. And it needs to be all three of them, not just one. Although if you could prove one of them, that would be really, really helpful. But all three of them, this preponderance of evidence that they often cite and all the other evidence. Well, can you just concentrate on producing evidence of curvature? Because if the best that you've got soundly, and we can recreate the soundly effect with a road, then that's not kind of comparable. It's not kind of strong evidence to support curvature. There should be curvature everywhere. It should be observable, measurable, verifiable, repeatable everywhere. And nobody seems to be able to get it apart from one little area in Pontchartrain. But the same goes for gravity and axial rotation. So perhaps we should consider just looking at the three main ones before you start going down these like very narrow applications of stuff. Why accept that we live on a ball when you can't prove that the three principal elements of the ball are present and correct and counted for? Because they do not appear to be.
I'd like to know how reflections can happen on a ball.
They can't.
I want to know if you're looking at a mountain that's, what, let's say 30 miles away, how can you see a mirror image of it in the lake?
You can't.
On a ball.
You can't. No.
It's impossible.
You can't. I want to know why 700 feet of curvature is not explained by the rumpus yet. Because not only is it 700 feet of curvature, and let's just say he comes back with some bendy-like nonsense, right? Let's just say we were to accept it, just for the sake of moving forward. Why is the evidence from the beach squashed and flattened, which is completely consistent with perspective and the convergence at the horizon? As something gets more towards the horizon, it appears to flatten because the same space is being represented at a narrower angle. That can't happen on a ball. That's direct proof that we live on a plane, regardless of whether you can bend light. So I want to see the explanation for why the land appears to be squashed and rumpus accepts that it's squashed. What's the explanation for that on a ball?
That's a very good point, actually. Now that you've actually just said that, it's just registered exactly how you mean it. Yeah, if the width at the bottom, if you can see land at the bottom and it's clearly land and it's being distorted and stretched wider, but there's identifiable parts of the mountain that you can see that's not distorted, then that has to be flat. Because if it was over a ball, it would just disappear. You wouldn't see that stretchiness at the bottom.
Correct.
So clearly it's stretching due to perspective, like you say.
Well, flattening.
Looking through the atmospherics.
It's being squashed because the angle is reducing to basically parallel to the floor that we're on.
But also, you've got the heavier density of the air at sea level as well. So it will be especially if you're looking at a mountain in the distance like that Ailsa Craig stuff. That mountain's squashed at the bottom, isn't it? In fact, all of it's squashed, but it's heavily squashed at the bottom.
That Ailsa Craig stuff's the best flat Earth proof that I've seen for months.
Yeah, I agree. Well, besides my 1 foot elevation.
Sure, but
from a baller.
That no Simon Dan was the one that claims that in some way we were misrepresenting the explanation for it. Yet his overlay was about as much of a match as it would be if you were trying to stitch curtains onto a ball. It was clearly wrong, but for some reason, my phone is ringing. Bear with me.
Yeah, for some reason he tried to pass it off as being the very tip of the mountain that would be exactly where the curve calcs would say. How disingenuous. I mean, it's utter manure.
Well, one of the things that I thought of when I was watching his video and saw how he highlighted the cap of the mountain and said that what we were seeing was simply the last 200 feet maybe, or something along those lines. But if you looked at it just from perspective, if you just simply looked at it, it would mean that the mountain was enormous, more large than it really was. I mean, you would just look. I don't know if I'm communicating myself very well, but when I looked and understood what he was saying, I said to myself, that would mean this mountain is absolutely huge.
Yeah. That's
It would be, I don't, this is bad English, more bigger. It would just be, and that's not what you see.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it was just obvious. By the way, he said in his thread that he's going to plan a response to what you guys did yesterday.
Oh, really? Excellent.
Really? Okay.
Nice to know he's a fan.
Well, I posted the episode on his wall, so I'm not sure if he knew about it until.
I'd like to just take this moment to invite Simon Dan on the channel, and if you want to come on and talk about how you've lied about your overlay and how your overlay is completely and utterly wrong in every sense of the word overlay, Simon Dan, come on the channel on the panel and let's talk about your skills at science. Alan B, good morning.
Hey, Alan.
Good afternoon, boys.
How you doing?
Had any sleep, Nathan?
I did get a reasonable amount. I'm still very ill, but I did get some sleep.
I think Nathan might be starting with a gentlemanly, friendly apology towards Alan. He might not do, but I think that he was harsh on Alan yesterday.
You must be joking. Not the Red's rhetoric. What I was going to say was that I spoke to Russian Vids, who sent me a little clip from the debate that Del and Gavin had, which I hadn't seen, but he sent me a snippet of it and said, let me know what you think. So I listened to that's the last 5 minute, the closing part of that 2-hour debate where Russian Vids had joined. And what I found interesting was that he raised a couple of good points, but one specifically that he raised was that we don't get to see spaceships leaving Earth's atmosphere. In other words, we don't get to see them going into space. Now, he also added on to that returning from space, but his point was fairly clear and concise and made well and heard by the audience, me especially. We don't get to see that, ever, with our own eyeballs or on videotape. And what Red did was danced around it, talked about the fuel that was being used, talked a lot about space, but didn't actually address his point in any way, shape or form. So is it just an interesting one to dodge, but he dodged it. Indeed, he did dodge it, Red's rhetoric, that is.
Yeah. And then he got kicked for implying that the Challenger shuttle disaster was a hoax. Well, let's be honest. There is evidence that shows that the people that were on the Challenger shuttle disaster do appear to be alive. So if you're just going to be an auto-denier for the allegation that that evidence exists, how narrow-minded and ignorant are you to suggest that somebody must be an arsehole or whatever it was, the word that you used to describe him, for implying or suggesting that the Challenger disaster was a fake? Because there is evidence that supports the notion that them people didn't actually die. Are you a moron?
Well, sorry, sleeping. Is that you, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had the situation, or have you ever had anyone that's had the situation where you run into a supermarket, just for example, and when you're a youngster and you latch onto someone and think it's your mother or father?
Yeah, but that would require 8 coincidences.
No, it wouldn't. It would require the same thing. It would require the same facial recognition as someone going on the interwebs, CGI.
Yeah, but 8 times, right?
No, 8 times. 8 times there's 7 billion people in the world.
Yeah, but
it's not
do you
difficult.
Understand the laws of probability on how remote that would be?
Yes, I do. That's what I just said.
Right. So it's not logically a fair point to make.
And it's also the name similarities too. You can't dodge that.
Some of them didn't even change the name. Come on.
So if the Challenger was a hoax, why would a hoax have the same people looking the same with the same names?
Because they're laughing at you.
Think about it.
Because they don't think we're gonna look into it twice. You know, it's just like presenting the fact that the world is so huge that you can't detect a curve. So we're just going to go along with that and think that we can't detect a curve because the world's so huge. But then you have someone else present. Wait, hold on. But then you have someone else present the fact that a ship goes over the curve, so you can detect it. Well, which is it? But they don't expect us to put 2 and 2 together. They don't expect us to hold those two ideas in conflict and go, wait a minute, it can't both be. So the fact that...
Who doesn't expect you to put those two things together?
Science, the books that we read. I can remember as a kid in school, I remember thinking theoretical... The textbooks, the government that puts together our educational system, that presents us, and my science teacher when I was in middle school, who said, the world is so big, imagine you're an ant on a blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, I could theoretically think about that idea and think, wow, that's huge.
Dude, so you're saying your science teacher is in on the game, which means my science teacher was.
No. See, we say this over and over and over again. We say this over and over and over again. They are not in on it. They simply believe what they were told. Just like if I was a science teacher right now. If I went into the science, into high school and was teaching science and I believed the program, all I'm doing is regurgitating the education. I didn't look into it. I didn't study it any further. I just simply read the textbooks and I'm giving you the answers.
Correct.
So I don't have to be in on it.
No, dude. Do you know what the supposed, I'll say supposed, do you know what the supposed population of the Earth is?
80 billion. Is it?
Well, if our maps of the geography are wrong, I would venture to guess our maps of the population is wrong too. What's your point?
My point is, how do you expect to even comprehend? I can't comprehend what you're saying because it's...
Yeah, but Jazz, are you sober tonight or are you drunk?
I'm sober as Riley, and that's one thing. That's one thing I'll say to you right now.
I'm not so sure you are. I'll be honest.
I'll say because they all think chemtrails exist. Chemtrails prove the Earth's a globe. I'm sorry, but they do.
Yeah, they're all straight. Why is that?
Look at a chemtrail on the horizon. It curves.
Yeah, show me one that does.
Look for yourself.
I have done. And I had a back and forth with Sly on it, and there are no chemtrails that curve on the horizon. Have you got any evidence that says that that's true?
No, you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
No, you haven't. You're a shit researcher if you have.
Right, so let's test your research skills and see what evidence
Flat Earthers.
Show us a chemtrail at the horizon that's curved.
Have you heard of Matt Powerland?
Show us a chemtrail at the horizon that's curved.
Have you heard of Matt Powerland?
Don't call me a shit researcher and then try obfuscating. Let's see what evidence you've got of a curved chemtrail at the horizon. Come on.
I'm not calling you one. I'm saying, have you heard of Matt Powerland?
You just said, what kind of research skills have you got? And I'm asking you to produce evidence. What's your claim?
Matt Powerland. Matt Powerland claims
Never heard of him.
#1 flat Earth researcher.
Now, about that curve.
Never heard of him either. Can we move on to this chemtrail on the horizon, please?
Any evidence of your chemtrail on the horizon being curved? If you can show a curved chemtrail on the horizon, I'll jump ship right now with you. I'll be on your side. Let's see it.
No, Matt Powerland said...
Forget Matt Powerland. We don't know who he is. You made a claim, and I'm calling you on it. You made a claim, I'm calling you on it.
Matt Powerland said, because since we've heard about flat Earth, chemtrails are arcing. Now, if the Earth's flat and chemtrail planes are arcing, then we don't have air travel because aeroplanes are going to get nowhere.
That's nonsense. Total nonsense.
It's not nonsense. It's fucking reality, Nathan.
No need to swear.
You're drunk again.
Just out of interest, Jazz, I just did want to ask you one question though about Challenger. So, do you think do you disagree? Do you think you've got a different idea about what happened to the guys that have made assertions on this show or on that debate? Would you say that you disagree?
Me?
Yeah.
And what
Jazz.
entirety are you actually saying?
You'd say you disagree, right?
They were killed when the solid rocket booster ruptured the external fuel tank.
Yeah,
Okay.
where's the death certificate?
Hold on. I just want your position is it happened and was real, right? And our position is no one's going to space. Space is fake. The whole thing's a lie. Therefore, that's a lie. Therefore, would you agree that it's a decent debating point?
Well, I have to ask you, Nathan, would you agree that flat Earth is just a complete load of bullshit? As
You just seem to literally railroad every single decent question that's put to you, Jazz, and then spout drunk nonsense. I mean, it's pretty sad. This is the level that we get at the moment. But my point was going to be, before Jazz railroaded it, ignored the question entirely and changed the subject, was that we have decent debating points that are getting ejected from other platforms, which is why, yeah, people can accuse me of being biased. I am. I've never denied that I'm a flat earther. But at least on this platform, if there is a decent debating point to be put across, as opposed to a fallacious one or a begging the question one, whatever, I'd rather it actually got debated. And in that instance, I thought that Russian Vids had an absolutely outstanding point, but it just got completely railroaded. It just got ignored and railroaded. I just didn't get it. Why wasn't there, like, suddenly footage of rockets actually going into space, leaving Earth's atmosphere, being presented left, right, and centre, rather than
Nathan,
just
can I ask you a question about rockets going into space? Why the hell do you think? Why would you think that they would need a 4D camera on them?
A what?
To point back at Earth, just to show you people that there is. You wouldn't believe it anyway.
Oh, that's not my point. My point is none were presented. It wasn't like, well, of course they can show rockets going into space. They go into space all the time. Look, here's a rocket going into space. It was just an obfuscation of his point, was all I was saying. Russian Vid's point was extremely valid, but it was ignored by somebody who claims to be a space expert. Not that Red's Rhetoric's ever been to space.
Why would Reds or any one of us need to go to space to prove that we go to space?
Because that's what validating something is, Jazzaconda.
I know for you, because you guys...
Yeah, for some people, they just accept it on face value, which is idiotic in my view, but for you, it's good enough. Oh, we've lost the panel, I think. Maybe a short interlude, we shall see. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
No, what a bummer. You the Easter music. It's been a while. I didn't have such a sore throat. Maybe I should attempt it anyway for comedy value. A croaky voice. Welcome to the show. No, I think that's as much as I should do. If you can hear me in the chat, I will get a link out to you in the next 30 seconds in Skype. The link has now gone out on Skype. Hopefully I'll get a few guests in a few moments. Quite remember exactly what we were saying, which would have been taken as being that contentious. What you got there? That's a very noisy toy. Thank you for bringing that. Yes, let's turn you off. Hey, Anthony.
Can I, whilst we've not got the link out, can I show people something? I want to show a really good example of a Just So story.
A Just So story? I love a good Just So story. Go ahead.
Yeah, me too. Right. So what I want to do here is I want to. This, I know Jazz was drunk, but let's make this a bit bigger. I want to show a back and forth that I had with a guy yesterday. Now, the context of this is that he said something, it was legal related, and I called him on it. And I said, he claims that he had, he spent his working career in numerous different courts. And I said to him, I'd love to know what evidence of your claim you could produce to have rights of audience as high as you claim. And he said Magistrates, Crown, Court of Appeal, and County Court. Now, that's a wide variety of courts. To have rights, now I'm assuming that he was working professionally in this capacity, but he then corrected me and said, I didn't say that I was a member of a legal profession, did I? They're not the only people that can appear in court. So I said, now bear in mind, this isn't really contentious. I'm not trying to prove that the guy's lying, and he's not trying to prove that he's telling the truth. This is a really good example of a just so story, okay? And this is what happens when an authoritative figure gives you an example and you just accept it. So I said, unless you're a criminal, the only people that can engage in magistrates, county, crown, and high courts are the admin clerks on the front desk or barrister without advocate status. So which are you, a barrister or a clerk on the front desk? Now, to be honest, I'm calling his bluff because I'm seeing what answer he gives, and I know that he's one or the other. So it doesn't really matter which, but I'm calling him to see what his response is. And this is what he says. I'll start and finish with this, after which I'll say no more on the subject. In 1980, the year I was born, I was appointed to the post of National Insurance Inspector with the DSS. Part of my remit was to warn of criminal action and follow through with it in the continued absence of satisfaction. This included preparing the case, laying information, serving summonses, prosecuting in guilty plea cases, blah, blah, blah. And that was in the magistrates' court. Oftentimes, I or one of my colleagues will be called upon to attend county court to present where civil remedy was preferred. Later in my investigative career, I was asked to advise in a high court case of mine. I've been instrumental in winding up companies and getting negligent directors disqualified. I have made individuals bankrupt, provided evidence to support restriction orders, all of which requires me to ensure that the relevant laws are correctly applied. Happy? Now, remember, this is not contentious. I'm not going to try and prove he's lying. I'm not going to accept that he's telling the truth. He's given a reasonable explanation, and most people would just accept the just so story because it sounds credible. This is the point. If he produced evidence to prove that his claims were correct, I'd accept it. But in the absence of evidence, it's just another story. So what do you do with this? If you're a flat earther, you ask for evidence. If you're a ball earther, it sounds logical and reasonable that the guy's telling the truth, so you'll just accept it on face value. But me, I want to see evidence. If it was contentious and I would want the point proven, I would want to see proof that what the guy's saying is true. I would not accept it based on his word. Even though it sounds logical and reasonable and credible, I'd still want to see proof that what he was saying is true. Because if you accept stuff without evidence to the point and it was contentious, then you'll just accept anything that sounds credible, plausible, and logical, which is what Tim Osmond does. If it sounds logical and reasonable, he'll accept it. So that's what the guy's done. He's explained that, and it sounds brilliant, right? Nobody would really challenge that, and I'm not challenging it because it's not really important. I don't care whether he was or wasn't, but he's given a justification. But as a flat earther, I would only accept it if he proved it with evidence. Otherwise, it's just another story. And it's the same for the Challenger disaster. Anybody that comes up with a credible explanation for derp, if it sounds credible, logical, reasonable, and it's coming from a position of authority or at least apparent authority, ballers simply accept it. They auto-accept authority.
Oh, Riley, how dare you question them? How dare you? I'm going to ban you. I'm going to kick you right now.
But look at what he said.
Remember that?
Look at what he says. And there you have it. You asked, I answered, and you dismissed my reply out of hand. That, sir, is why I will not engage with you any further. You know perfectly well that I am compelled to refrain from pointing fingers and naming names. That's fair enough. But in response, I said, that's also why you accept anything that an apparent authority gives you, like our government, for example. So in relation to the Challenger, if the government tell you that certain things happened and there was a seal that was frozen that didn't make a proper seal, and that was what the cause of the Challenger disaster was, but then you see evidence that supports the notion that the Challenger's crew didn't actually die and they're all still alive and well bar one guy who's probably died of natural causes, that is evidence that that explanation might not be true. And Steve McRae will not accept that, and he kicked Russian vids because he basically said it was a hoax. Now, for the record, I agree with Russian vids. There is evidence that suggests that the people that's supposed to have died in the Challenger accident did not actually die, and it was fabricated by the government to persuade people for whatever reason, for whatever
come
narrative.
on, Riley. Come on. They were all cloned, to help out the family get over the grief. They were all cloned. Come on.
But the point is, if
they're all twins, man. I'm telling you. You never heard of twins? All 8 of them, man. They're all twins.
Yeah.
No. Those would have been registered. No, they were all clones. They were advanced NASA clones.
But my point is, a baller
to console the families for their loss.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, my point is that a baller will generally accept a logical, reasonable explanation without any evidence that it's true. Whereas I won't do that. I'll say, well, if it's contentious and I want to see that it is true, I want to see proof. Now, the reality is, of course, this guy might be genuinely telling the truth, and he may produce some evidence if he wanted to prove the point that's not contentious, but he's not going to do because no one really cares. But the point is, a baller will generally accept it to be true. Whereas I will say, I'll accept it if you produce evidence that proves it's true. And that's the difference between people like Jazz, who think that the Challenger disaster must be whatever, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is, unless you can prove that it's true, I mean, show us the birth certificates for all the people that died. Come on. Then that evidence doesn't exist. Why? Because it's a sensitive, secret document, really, apparently. Come on. Anyway, that was my Just So story.
Rune Thorson actually is doubling down on my theory. Check out their birth dates. They are children of World War II experiments. Thank you.
Alan B claims, yes, it does exist. Whatever you're referring to, Alan, come on the panel. I can't send you the link, but let's see the evidence. I mean, let's be honest, a death certificate from the government probably wouldn't convince me that they did actually die when there's better evidence that suggests that they didn't. If you've not looked into the Challenger disaster hoax, you should do, because the evidence is strong. These people don't look like these people after so long. And I mean, people do change over time.
Come on, everybody knows astronauts don't actually get in rockets.
I know, but these baltards all accept it without any evidence to support that it's true. Yeah, we all saw it. Yeah, it can be explained. There might not have been anybody on that rocket. Have you ever thought of that? No.
Yeah, you don't actually see it in one shot, like from the outside. You get to see like the inside bridge view of them getting in what looks like sort of like a rocket, but it's closed off from the outside, so you can't actually compare it.
I'd like to know, to be honest,
I'd like to know the outside rocket launch. So
I'd like to know why Steve McRae is such a bigot against the idea that Challenger might have been actually faked for some reason. It could have been budget-related reasons, that they didn't want to spend more money on the space project because people were getting close to the target, realizing that there was no space, so they had to back it off. I mean, who knows? We weren't there at the time. I was too young. But looking back on it now, there's a lot of logical explanations that would explain why they might lie to us. A lot. So, Steve McRae, why is it that you kicked Russian vids when he basically cited the evidence for supporting the fact that, or the notion that the Challenger disaster might have been faked? Is it just because you're an auto believer? Are you a bigot, Steve?
It was because he was bringing the evidence.
Arwin, you missed my crescendo. Let me just repeat that last bit. Are you a bigot, Steve? Sorry, go on, Arwin.
No, he was banning him because he was going to actually present the evidence. That he was not going to allow that.
Yeah, of course.
He's just harping on the feels, like how dare the precious astronauts. Not actually allowing him to say that their so-called twins or clones are still out there on video.
Nathan, what's your view on Challenger?
Yeah.
Nathan.
But by the way, after that point, everybody in chat, except for the trolls, were starting to get timeouts. Even Jason, who was on the panel, got timeouts. So they were just basically making sure that nobody had a say, so they could do their little globe circle jerk afterward.
What's Jazz
Really
Conda
pathetic.
sorry for? Was he the guy that booted everybody?
No, Jazz is saying a flat Earth proves the Earth's a globe. Sorry, really? Jazz, you're drunk. Go to bed.
Yeah, tell me how mirroring happens on a ball.
Yeah, we need a plane for mirroring to happen, for mirages to happen. We need a plane. Can you anybody show how a mirage can happen on a sphere? Morons. Steve Anthony, the one that pretends he's a reporter from the BBC. Don't know why he does that. Bit of a sexual fetish, probably. Fantasizes about being a presenter with a BBC microphone in his hand. Don't know why he does that. Shout out to Steve Anthony.
Fox News troll every now and then also.
I know. I don't know why he imitates news reporters.
Well, because they're fake news.
Daddy was a journalist, probably. What happened to your live stream, Steve Anthony, that had like 2 viewers, one of which was you?
I think it went to the wayside, didn't it?
Yeah, I think Soundleys is about to do the same. No one ever seems to go in that every time I look on the live links. I bet he puts Flat Earth in the title for so it comes up on my feed when I click search. Yeah, so if you haven't looked into the Challenger hoax, you should do, because there's a lot of evidence that is strong that supports the notion that maybe it was fixed in some way. So shout out to Pete Shea, Agent Shea.
I don't think there's any debate left with the Challenger stuff. It's pretty much like the 9/11.
Yeah, and Steve McRae going mad at Russian vids. What a moron. Why would you do that? Are you a bigot? Answers on a postcard. Is Steve McRae a bigot? Well, I can't believe that you get Russian vids, you idiot.
It's essentially just something that's been presented on TV, right? So it's just a TV movie. And to say, well, people died, it's when there's evidence that they're very much alive and well, it's like saying, well, again, it's back to Godzilla. Well, people died. I saw it, man. I saw it. People died. Godzilla's real.
I was gobsmacked at Steve. I mean, Steve McRae, right? I mean, the funny thing with Steve McRae is that he presents himself as this neutral bystander, that's this chat moderator. Yet when me and Nathan and it was that Chris Monk went into his chat, we were in there for a whole hour, just over an hour. In that time, my claim, the assertion made by me was not considered once, but somehow Steve McRae declared Rumpus victorious, and my claim was invalid without consideration of the evidence. After an hour. I mean, what's that all about? How can anybody claim be declared invalid without even consideration of the evidence? Steve, come on.
He can just claim whatever he likes because he is a mental tyrant.
Steve
And
McRae
he likes to
like
do the whole the hand gesture. You know which one.
Steve McRae, when Russian Vids said his thing and he basically demanded that Russian Vids leave, he reminded me of a cross between Alex Jones losing his temper. And that kid, you know, Britney Spears, when Britney Spears shaved her hair and that kid went, just leave Britney alone. It was like a cross between the two.
Like a really early viral YouTube video, like some really camp guy with tears in his eyes.
It was a fat kid, wasn't it?
I don't think it was a fat kid. I think it was a really skinny kid, actually. Just like a kind of, you know, petite guy.
Yeah, and he was basically saying, just leave Britney alone, whilst he's full on mid-flow tears and everything. That was kind of like that was what I had in my mind when Steve did that to Russian Vids. Shout out to Steve, loser.
Just to wrap up this part of the show, we'll have a little break in a moment, but reminder to the Globies out there, you don't have a model. So at the start of the show, we asserted that there's plenty of Globies out there that fallaciously, because we don't believe this model's a pseudoscience, but would state that without a flat earth model, and Red's Rhetoric's recent hangout would echo this, because he was saying, present us your nonsense fantasy to challenge our nonsense fantasy. It's not necessary. You don't have to come up with a nonsense fantasy to smash the living daylights out of someone else's fantasy. You don't have to offer up a replacement. So models are exactly that, just some fantasy pseudoscience. They don't prove anything, yet they want another model to replace it, which is sad to begin with. But either way, we're now in a position where we, as a collective group on this show, have smashed a model, your model, the globe model, Twice. Yeah. So no Google Earth model, right? That's not a real model. We've had lots of concessions for that. No one wants to, you know, we even get apparently criticised for using Google Earth. Now, how dare we? It's not a model. We should be using the model, the standard model. Well, we just smashed the standard model. We already knew it was an assumption, but it's nice to have a confession from the calculator producer, one that produces one of these standard model calculations to show you how much Earth curve should be in the way. And all of these models, they're all the same. There is no, unless someone feels free, you can come on and show me a different style of calculator. They all work in the same way. They're all basically the same. They're all based on the standard model of Earth with a standard R radius value. So those models don't work. So you don't have a model, globies. So where is it? You don't have one? Right, then you don't have a globe. We knew that anyway. The Earth's obviously and observably flat, but you don't have a model, globers.
You can instantly dismiss Google Earth just by getting it to carry on, guys.
I was hoping you'd round out the show with that point, actually, Anthony. But there we go. Maybe Arwin or Ranty will do the honour.
Sorry?
Just literally need to kill another couple of minutes, and I was hoping one of you two would round out the show before there's a gap.
Come on, Arwin, it's your turn.
Me?
Yep. You got to round the show out.
Round it out as in R?
Just have to make a point that's possibly, hopefully, been mentioned on the show at some point. You know, round it out.
I can do it if you can't.
Go on then, talk about the shuttle.
The shuttle?
Or just
Oh, no, I wanted to talk about
This is agony, man. Come on, guys.
Right, okay, I'll show you. How can this image that I presented today, how can this image happen on a flat Earth? Sorry, on a ball Earth. My mistake. How can this be on a ball Earth? How can we get that over the hump? How can we see it reflected back on itself over the hump?
It's fractalooming. Come on.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, well, then I'm sure you know what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!